I want to ask him something after the meeting.
I don't know. Okay. I want to call this regular council meeting of July 23rd to order and ask for an adoption of the agenda. Somebody make that motion. Councillor Cross, Councillor Charlotte. All those in favor? Motion's carried. I'll ask for the adoption of the minutes from the July 9th, 2019 regular council meeting. Or someone to make that motion? Councillor Charlotte, seconder. Councillor Elliott. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Any business arising from those regular council meeting minutes, July 9th? Councillor Cross.
Yes, Your Worship, I've got 3 items from the minutes. The first is a comment. Thanks very much for reading out my comments on the quarry issue that I asked you to read out for me. I appreciate you doing that for me. And the second item I have is related to that. I'm curious, since I was away, as to why our resolution has a flat no on the one quarry, but is a referral on the second one, which is actually the Jordan River one, which people are very concerned about. So if I could have some understanding.
So the Jordan River quarry is within the CSRD, the other quarry is within the city limits.
And it's that simple. So it's just, so, but could we not have said not recommended, like we don't support this flat out, or is there a process?
Did we say that we didn't support it flat out? How did we? Marion, you want to talk about that a bit?
Yes, Your Worship. So in regards to the one that was in our city limits, we have zoning that permits that use. So that, and the zoning bylaw is a legal tool that outlines the uses and what can be done. And so and we also have an OCP that has a more recent update on land use in regards to environmental. So what staff is asking for is that a needs assessment be requested, which is a part of our request back to the Crown, and also to be looking at some more detail on the riparian issue as well. And so we made a list of about half a dozen comments that we're going to take back to the province and ask that those be considered moving forward, and that our development permit process, because we have 4 of them in that area, be adhered to moving forward with any analysis on those sites.
Okay.
So we've asked for due diligence on it. We haven't said yes or no, but we're saying that here's the process and here's the framework that we're working within in our jurisdiction, and this is what we need.
So that, if I can be followed, Your Honor. So that process does leave us the option of saying we don't support this down the road.
So
I understand it's not in our land, but we can be clear about our stance, can we not?
unfortunately, our zoning bylaw has this as a permitted use.
So, okay, so do I need to table a motion as a councillor to change the zoning bylaw for that area?
So in order to, what we would have to do is look at a zoning bylaw amendment which requires first, second, third public hearing to align that zoning in align with the OCP.
Okay. I would be championing that if that process can be put in motion.
That's something that you can discuss with the corporate officer and myself.
Yeah, afterwards, okay. I will be doing that for a certain.
And there was a third point to that?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So the third point is a totally unrelated point, and that is just a comment, and I don't want this to come across the wrong way, but I wasn't here. I'll just make the comment that I was really disappointed that the development permit issued for the Boston Pizza DP 2019-04, there's conditions here. I thought that we, as a council, would have done a better job if we had asked for a better looking exterior. And I realized that a number of councillors spoke out about that they voiced an opinion, but at the end of the day, it was fully carried. And I just think, my position as a councillor is we need to do a better job for Revelstoke to look out for our major assets and our major corridors and what we look like from the highway. And I think that developer would have been more than happy to come back and change their plan if we had asked them to. Because it would have been just exterior stuff that would have had to be happening.
There. We did discuss that motion. I'm sure you've seen the video, and we don't have any way of dealing with that and encouraging or forcing the change because we don't have a bylaw relating to that. And if that's something that you want to look at down the road, by all means, we can discuss that as well.
I understand that, Your Worship, but I would just say that council is in governance, and whether there's a formal procedure or not, we still can make a voice heard. So I'm just expressing my disappointment that we didn't be more forceful
Too
on that
bad
issue.
we weren't here to do that.
Yes, it was too bad that my business meant I couldn't. Excuse me, can I finish? It's too bad that my business took me away for the day.
This way.
Yes, Your Worship, as part of our OCD review, this lies in the scenic corridor. What we can do is look at the scenic corridor development permit guidelines and add in design guidelines that are more supportive in the nature that council has raised their questions in regards to. But we can certainly do that as part of the OCD revision and deal with the scenic corridor DP area.
Great.
Yeah, I just wanted to express that. Thank you.
Okay. Any further concerns or questions about the minutes? Seeing none? I'm just going to carry on. Just one announcement from me today. I did an interview with Global News regarding the highway situation and the number of accidents we've had in recent days. Again, it seems to be that we need to have fatal accidents to get our point across that our roads are less than adequate in some areas, and my concern has been with some of these things in my conversation with MOTI and with other members of the public dealing with this is that we need to have some sort of road separation to keep people apart. And I think we see Corporal Thomas here, and definitely I think Corporal Blakeney, you would agree that that's part of the issue is keeping traffic from crossing the center line.
Yeah, I mean, that would be the best case scenario if you could wave a wand. I met with them as well with the reporter today, and I would not comment, and they knew this in advance. I spoke with our Southeast District Traffic Services Media Relations, as well as Sergeant Haney, who's in charge of Southeast District Traffic Services. For us to speak on statistics, etc., it's isolated incidences. Unfortunately, we had a back-to-back incident July 18th and July 19th where you could almost mirror the crash in the exact same area. One, unfortunately, was a fatality. The other one was not, but easily could have been. But the message I sent out basically today was that there is a recommended speed sign of 80 kilometers clear and visible for westbound motorists. And in my opinion, that was not maintained based on, well, we had heavy rain both days back to back, and based on the amount of motorists that have negotiated those turns without accidents. That is a new pavement there. I'm also talking to the ministry about the asphalt and the oils that do come out of that, but I couldn't comment on that. I was just more proactive. What drivers can do better and be aware that the rules of the road are in place. If you follow the rules of the road and you pay attention to defensive driving, you should get home safe.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate your input. Moving on, item number 7, delegations and presentations. Today we have Revelstoke Forest Workers Society, so Pat McMechan from Stella Jones and Michael Copperthwaite from RCFC are here. Gentlemen, if you take the podium.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. It's great to have the opportunity to come talk to you on behalf of the forest industry. Pat and I are both directors on what's known as the Revelstoke Forest Workers Society. That's a society that used to be called the Forest Workers Group. It was formed in 1996 when there was a local crisis in the area. Evans Forest Products at the time got themselves into a financial crisis and they shut down. So locally, a lot of people were supplying logs and logging to this company and found themselves out of work. A local person, Cindy Pierce, was instrumental in getting the society going to help try and help these workers find resources and potentially retraining. So this society now has kind of moved along through provided lots of training to different forest workers, and today we probably find ourselves more of a voice the forest industry, a go-to for the city or other groups if they're wanting to contact or be connected to the forest industry. Let's see. So what I will do is we're going to jump around a little bit, and Pat is going to take off here a little bit, and then I'll jump back in.
Perfect. Thanks. Yeah, my name's Pat McMechan. I'm a forester, and I also run the Stella Pool area just west of town. And just add one more thing to Mike's intro there. The Forest Workers Society also puts on timber days. So yeah, just sort of share information about the local industry. So we're made up of wood product producers, silviculture contractors, firefighting contractors, logging contractors, road construction contractors, forest management consulting contractors, forest licensees, and then the ministry, which has an operations division, East Timber Sales, and a wildfire management group. And if you're paying any attention to the news these days, you recognize that the forest industry in BC is having a bit of a tough go at the moment, and has had for a few months. Luckily, Revelstoke is unique, and because of that, we are doing okay. It's still a bit of a fragile situation, but it's at the same time, we've been stable for quite some time, and the relationship that the various companies has suggests that we will continue to be stable going forward. So we're a very diverse forest industry in Revelstoke. Much of the interior of BC is made up of 4 major companies, Canfor, Toco, Interfor, and West Fraser. And the island is principally one company, Island Timberlands. So if this was like much of the rest of the province, we'd have one major company here, one mill, and if things went sideways, that would be a real problem. That's not where we're at. So we've got very diverse forest tenure types and ownership, a number of different players with volume-based licenses, area-based licenses, woodlots, the community forest, which is actually a tree farm license, but lots of different players, which is healthy. We've got a very diverse species profile. So the interior of BC is primarily lodgepole pine. You get further north into some spruce and some fir in the south, but you're basically making one product out of one species. So here we go. We have what we call a kootenai mix: cedar, fir, pine, spruce, hemlock, and we do a very good job of producing value out of those species. We do not produce the standard 2x4 that gets mass-produced in BC and sent to overseas and into the United States. We produce high-end dimensional lumber, primarily Downie, poles, which are cedar poles, and laminated veneer lumber in Golden. So all value-added products, which helps us continue when the rest of the industry is having a hard time. But despite these challenges to generate an economically feasible supply of timber, Revelstoke supports a vibrant forest industry that is a leader in value added. So the forest licensees, we've got Downie, Louisiana Pacific, which has their facility in Golden, but they have a woodlands department in Malacca and have operating areas here. RCFC, of course you guys know. Stella, which was Bell Pole 10 years ago, but no longer. And the ministry, and then we have 4 local woodlots. So it's Jim Graham down south, the Benwells to the west, Phil Maws right in town here, and Mike Cummings and Del Williams out in McPherson. And there's a really strong positive relationship between all of us. We move wood around all the time to try to get the right piece of wood going to the right place to maximize value. This is a bit of a crummy map, so I apologize for that, but this is Revelstoke here. It's a map of sort of the Revelstoke and Golden timber supply areas. So this is Revelstoke again. This is Golden over here, Micah at the top. These dark green areas are national parks, but the other colors are different licensees. So again, if you're anywhere else in the province, this would be a single color. It would be a Canfor or Interfor or something. And here we're a number of different players, all with different management areas in different areas, and are working together to make this work. Angus is supposed to be here today. He had a schedule conflict, unfortunately, so I don't represent Downie, but I'll speak for them for a moment. They're the largest and most advanced cedar mill in North America, using over 500 cubic meters a year. They're a remanufacturing facility on site, just Selkirk specialty. They have an annual allowable cut, so that's how much timber that they have rights to, of almost 182,000 cubic meters a year, and that's in the Revelstoke TSA. So, let's call it 200, and they're going through 500 in their mill, so they're a huge net importer of jobs into this community. Their employment is roughly 370 full-time employees, so I think it's more like 300 right in the mill, and then all their contractors and whatnot. They mill the Kootenai mix, which grows around here, and there's no other mill that we're aware of that does that. Most mills specialize in one species or two species, and they produce one product. They run, they're doing fir for 2 weeks, and then they're doing cedar for 3 weeks, or whatever they're doing. They're taking advantage of everything that we've got here. Again, producing local employment. They source their wood from Chase to the west, Mica to the north, Alberta border, and down to the U.S. border. And they get some wood off the coast, and their products are sold North America, Asia, Europe, and Australia, so everywhere, or lots of places. Stella Jones. We are the leading North America supplier of treated wood products. It's railway ties, poles, and treated lumber. Our Revelstoke operation here, we just do cedar poles. We're the most productive cedar pole manufacturing facility in North America. If anybody wants a tour, I'd be happy to walk you around there. Our annual cut, and this is for our company, is 110,000 cubic meters, but about 50 that's in the Revelstoke area. And we produce about 50 cubic meters worth of pole a year. So we're net neutral on jobs. We swap wood all over the place. But essentially what we're allowed to cut in this area is also what we produce here. Employment approximately 25, and that's direct jobs in the yard and also the contractors. We produce high-end cedar poles. We can't physically produce enough. Huge demand. We just keep cranking as much as we can there. Wood is sourced from everywhere in BC except the coast. Our poles that we have access to in the coast go to our facilities on the coast, and we sell all over North America and overseas. Our yard there at that location has operated uninterrupted since 1962. We've never had a timeout. We've just been going steady. All right, Mike's going to take the shift here.
And no one from LP could be here, but being a former employee, I can talk to them a little bit. Louisiana Pacific ended up purchasing Evans Forest Products back in 1998. So they invested a fair bit of money into the Golden operation, converting it from a strip plywood plant to what's known as laminated veneer lumber. And these are big blanks that come out. They're about 8 feet wide, and they can make them any thickness, and they're about 60 feet long. And those are what a lot of headers and beams are made out of in buildings these days. They, at the time, had a mill in Malaqua that was a cedar mill. They made a strategic decision at that time, looking at what Downie had been doing here in Revelstoke, investing a lot of money into this mill. They decided they wouldn't be able to compete for that same cedar wood product, and they shut that mill down. Most of those employees were from Malaqua and Sycamoose. So at the end of the day, it was a good thing for this community. It ensured that Downie would continue on with a good wood supply. They are an international company. Their headquarters in Nashville, and they operate in several areas in Canada and in the southern U.S. And their products are also sold all around the world. Not to be disrespectful to the other companies, but the crown jewel of the local forest industry is the Revelstoke Communities Forest Corp. Of course, we're owned by the city. We cut about 78,000 meters a year. We have somewhere around a 25-person full-time equivalency. Our logs are, we sell most of that through our log sort yard. About 25,000 cubic meters comes through our log sort yard, where we try and ensure we get the highest quality manufacturing of that log. That could be, we will sell a single log to somebody, or a truckload, or 10 truckloads, depending on what they need. And one of the things that we get calls from everybody as far as back east or down into the States, because there's so many people with mills that have no access to wood, that we're well known that we can provide at times that for everyone. A lot of our logs also go to what we call our industry partners. 40% of our saw logs go to the company is Downie that benefits from that. The revenue from RCFC, we hope to make revenue, and recently we've created what's called the RCFC Legacy Fund, and so far we've managed to put $900,000 into that fund, and that's a fund that the community can use for local projects. And stay tuned, in a couple days there might be an announcement, so we're looking forward to that. One of our mandates is to hire locally, so we hire all our logging, road building, road maintenance, silviculture, layout. It's all done by local contractors. And one of the things that we think the community forest does provide is the citizens a bit more local control over the management of the forest resource. I think. Oh, and so a few other log producers that have been mentioned, but Selkirk is a component of Downie, and that's a value-added facility. Joe Kozak has a small sawmill up on Camosi Road. Keith Starling operates Take to Heart, and it's a small sawmill on the West Side Road. Tom Scott, well, if you've been outside next door and had a beer on the outside patio there, the slabs that the tabletops are made out of were custom cut by Tom from logs purchased from RCFC. LP, we talked about them. Stella Jones, we talked about them. Two other companies that aren't on the list is R. Lang Cedar, who produces shakes and shingles, and Cascade Cedar that also produces shakes and shingles. I think we're back to
Okay. So just want to walk through the land base here quickly and what's available for harvesting. Timber harvesting land base, and forestry's full of acronyms, we call it the THLB. And to start off with the provincial perspective, and why I think this is important is Stella Jones operates in Begbie Bench, Frisbee, Boulder. I get it all the time. Why can't you go somewhere else? And I want to see it and go log somewhere else. And it's a great idea, and you look around, you think that it's possible. I'd like to run through these this sort of iteration here and show that really it's not that easy. So the first one is the big outside province of BC. That's the total area of BC, 95 million hectares. The darker green or the brighter green, I'm not sure what that would be, but is the forested land base, 56 million hectares. The red is land available for timber harvesting, so 22 million hectares in BC. And the annual area harvested is about 200,000 hectares. So now I'll break it down to Revelstoke. There's the Revelstoke timber supply area. Without getting into the nitty-gritty, RCFC is a TFL, so it's not really part of this, but we have their data, so it's easy to lump them into this. We don't have the data for TFL 55, LP, and TFL 23. BCTS isn't as easy to get, so we've kept them out of this. So anyway, that area, Revelstoke being down there, Micah being here, is about 670,000 hectares. Supports the annual harvest of approximately 315 cubic meters. So now we're going to go through this, and there'll be all these reductions, so things that are taken out that are not available for harvesting. Okay, so non-crown lands. We've got Beaumont owns a bunch of land here. We've got private land all down here, so we can't harvest there. So that's taken out. The yellow again, non-forested is non-productive. So we've got lots of rock and ice and snow and it's all great stuff. Doesn't grow trees. So that's all that area. That's roughly 50% around here. It's taken out. It's not available. Parks and protected areas. Got a lovely national park here. That's great. And the ski hill, no logging there for us. Reserve for wildlife. So that's previous caribou areas, grizzly bear areas, etc. Another further reduction of 45,000 hectares. So again, we started off at just to highlight this, 670. Now we're down to 175,000 hectares we can go to. Inoperable forests, so that's areas that might be potential landslides, too steep, whatever the case may be. We can't practice forestry there either. Visuals, ungulate winter range, species at risk, further reductions. So, at the end of the day, the white slivers are where we can operate forestry in this area. So that again is LP, Stella Jones, Downie, RCFC. We get the timber out of those white areas. And that's all that's available to us, called the timber harvesting land base. All that other stuff is tied up, and you know, the word we use, whether it's appropriate or not, is called constraints, but those are areas that we can't go. So again, we've got 670,000, and what are we left with? 75,000 hectares is our total THLD. Of that, we harvest about 1% a year. So going forward, I know you guys are as up to speed on caribou as we are, if not more. Potential impacts of future federal critical caribou habitat, that would be the yellow areas here. Another really very significant hit if that does move forward, and that would take us from about 75 down to 25. So take away 2/3 of what we currently operate on. All right, and again, I'm sure you've all seen this. Revelstoke here, Revelstoke, it's too far out to really see Revelstoke somewhere down in there, but this is the proposed critical habitat for caribou by the federal government. I know that we've all been to the presentations, and just a bit of a shout out to the mayor here. We've had Stella Jones staff go to every one of the presentations, and this community by far was the loudest, and our mayor has been by far more involved and vocal than anybody else in that role. So thank you for that. Okay, Mike.
So a few of the challenges we just wanted to point out, and this might just not be just a local issue, this is probably provincial-wide. A shortage of forest workers, particularly loggers and truck drivers. We definitely face that here locally. There's a potential, well, there is a bit of a lack of recognition in the communities about what the forest industries do and how much we contribute. So that's something, that's why we're here today, and that's a job that companies like ourselves and Stella and the rest are going to work a little harder at, trying to get our message out. Locally, we call ourselves the wet belt area. And when we're different than the rest of the interior of the province, we operate on a much tougher terrain, very steep, very wet. The conditions are a lot tougher. We use different type of harvesting machines that are much more labor intensive and slower production. So at the same time, that increases our cost, and we have the highest delivered log cost in the province, interior here. Of course, just like Pat was saying, we don't know or understand the amount of caribou restrictions yet, so that's a big challenge facing us. And we, like Pat said, you know, there's the social and environmental society issues that we face every day. People don't want logging sometimes in their backyard, but we got to educate them on that. Not to leave you on a sour note, but the future for Revelstoke, we see it. The industry sees us. We see ourselves as still having a bright future. We're by no means a sunset industry. We intend to continue being a leader, providing high-paying, long-term, family-supporting jobs. Revelstoke's climate does grow trees very well. We're lucky that we have the Kootenai mix. We can be very reactive to different things, so it makes us a little bit more well-placed to be competitive. And I think we all realize, especially in this community, a diverse economy is just way better for any community. So thank you all for listening and giving us a little bit of extra time here to get through this. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike and Todd. I really appreciate you bringing some of these issues to us, but actually showing how much we can get once everything is pared down. There's not a whole hell of a lot left for us to be able to log. And it's a concern, and it's really good for us to be able to see those sorts of things. Councillors, do you have any comments or questions? Councillor Cross?
Yes, Your Worship. Gentlemen, thank you very much. I'm a strong environmentalist and a huge supporter of mixed use, and I think Revelstoke's forestry industry is the shining star of how to do that around the world, quite frankly, from everything I've read. So that's the way to do it, and I really appreciate you bringing it forward. Love the fact that our town has that. Downie is still and forestry in general is still our single biggest economic engine for sure. And I applaud our mayor's efforts, as you called out on his voice on the caribou and timber issue. So those are all great things. A couple questions, just out of curiosity. You mentioned we have the highest log costs, yet we've been very successful, and part of that is the Kootenai mix advantage. What else is attributed to that, do you think?
You suggest it's our value added. And we're not selling, selling the same 2x4 to the same market as everybody else.
Right.
So Downie's made their dimensional lumber is high-end cedar siding that people were willing to pay money for. Utility poles, pay big money for.
Properly done poles.
Yeah, exactly.
And house logs, like you can take that same log and run it through and create a bunch of 2x4s, but the value is not the same as selling it to a person that's willing to pay to make a house out of that log.
Right, got it.
And that's not possible everywhere, right? Like in Prince George, nobody really wants to use pine, for instance, to build a house. They want cedar. So they don't have that opportunity. It's not that they don't. I mean, I think, not to slight anybody, they're doing the best they can with what they have to deal with, right? Their species mix is pine or spruce. Yeah.
They've also got themselves in the situation where they've had all this consolidation in the industry and they only produce one thing. And if the market isn't good for that one thing today, then they're hooked.
So if I hear you right, it's the Kootenai mix advantage, it's the value-added advantage, it's the fact that we've built infrastructure, our logging people have built infrastructure that allows them to dance amongst the themes of the day.
We've got lots of players and we're working together.
Yeah. One other question, if I might. I noticed on this province-wide stats that based on the hectare consumption on an annual basis, there's a 110-year supply of wood, right? It's just simple math, 200,000 to 22 million. 110-year supply, not counting for reforested lands that could then be harvested.
Yeah.
Right? But I couldn't do the same thing for our area because the numbers didn't line up. So our consumption or our production is 315,000 cubic meters per year.
Yeah.
And our hectares of available wood are about 60,000.
Right, but we don't have a number for the number of cubic meters in that area.
Okay, so that was my big question.
Yeah. So
how many years we got?
Yeah. So to answer your question at a higher level, there's a tree forester in BC who comes around to all the areas and makes a decision about what the cut is. And that cut is generally based on putting in all this data and all these different variables, and it's a big complicated process, it takes a year. The objective is to have an 80 to 100 year rotation on what's available.
Right.
So what you're harvesting today, there's all this old growth out there and all these other things that are going to stay the way they are, but the area that we can harvest on, it's supposed to be rotating every
Right, it's about sustainability.
It's exactly that.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Really appreciate it.
Councillors, any other councillor?
That was awesome. Thanks a lot. I learned a lot. I thought I knew quite a bit about it, but every time I learn more about the forest industry, I realized that there's even more to appreciate about the local industry here in Revelstoke. I have a question. Is BCTS, is it the same as a CAN4 or whatever, or do they auction off timber sales licenses?
BCTS is a component of the government that auctions
So
their
it's
sales.
provincial. Or does they own and run?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
They have 20% of the AAC in the province.
In the whole province. Gotcha. Okay, so they are a little bit different. And this is a silly question, but the cedar poles, you said they are used for utility poles. What about when people start burying wires instead of, is that a thing?
Yeah, it's real. Right now, most of the infrastructure in BC, in North America, is sort of post-World War II. It's around 60, 70 years old, and it's all up for replacement right now. And really and truly, we cannot physically make enough of it. And that's the bottom line. We're pumping them out as quickly as we can, and we can't fill all the needs. So there, at some point in the future, I don't know when that'll be, and there are other options as well. There are metal ones, concrete ones,
Right.
Laminated poles. There are all these fiberglass, all these different options, and burying cables. But as we are today, and certainly our forecast going forward, sort of 10 years, that's not going to change for us.
Cool. Thanks.
Yep. Thank you.
Just a quick question. Old growth. Is there a distinction when you're allowed to cut old growth? Who makes those decisions?
So there's a government action regulation called the GAR that indicates what areas need to be put aside for old growth management and the percentage. So government ultimately makes the decision on what and where, and we live up to that. And north of Revelstoke, there are areas of old growth that are within both of our operating areas, and there are areas of old growth up there that are in parks and set aside in old growth GARs and just caribou areas and all sorts of other things. So
those decisions are made by biologists and
that's right. Yeah, you bet. And ultimately, government makes the decision on where that line is, where they want that line.
Right. And we haven't actually started. I think Mike, you mentioned is starting to cut a regrown area. Is that right? For the first time or recently?
Yeah, I've talked to you about that before. We're going to start doing a commercial thinning program,
Right.
and this area that we're planning to go into right now was harvested 45 years ago. So we're going to go back in now and extract some value from that. Leave it, not clear cutting it. We're removing some of the smaller stems, put more growth onto the remaining stems. So it's it's like a 45-year-old plantation. That's the stuff that we're removing. We can actually, it's big enough we can sell it as a log.
Now, is that a move to maintain sustainability in the future? Are we starting to think that this is the way we have to manage our forests?
Yeah, and it's all part of that process that Pat is talking about, where we do a timber supply analysis, and the land base is looked at, the old growth and the new stuff, and it's regrowing, and so that's all calculated into how much annually you're allowed to cut.
Councilor Cross?
Yes. So a question popped up in my head, just if you know the answer. Who has the actual logging rights for the land around that bay? Which company?
Yeah, so it's a mixture. If it's at the high, there's a mixture of a number. Highway 23 South, if you're between the highway and the lake,
Right.
what I call the Begbie Bench, but that is Stella Jones and Mike Cummings and Del Williams Woodlaw. And above the highway on the McPherson side, the mountain side, is BCD Timber Sales, and Del and Mike also have an area there.
Okay.
And that's right in that area. You get further south, it's all BCD Timber Sales, both sides.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate your input. I just want to mention a couple things. 2 o'clock this afternoon, Mayor Rice and I had a conference call with Doug Donaldson regarding caribou. So he has guaranteed that we, the stakeholders in this community, will be able to sit at the table for herd plans. so in addition to that, Section 11, of course, has stated no further closures, which we knew. However, we're not sure what the herd plans will do. So he's given us that, but also he said Section 11 has not signed yet, and it will not be signed until the agreement in the Northeast is signed, and it will be signed at the same time by him. So I just want to let you know we're working on that. We're probably, I'm going to say within 2 years of dealing with all of the herd plans. But there is 9 herds, priority herds that will be addressed first, and I'm not sure how many of those are in our area. But definitely we're sitting at the table. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on. Recommendations from Committee of the Whole, item 8A. Somebody want to put that motion on the table? Councillor Charlotte?
That the proposed parks and trails inspection and maintenance policy be adopted.
So seconder for that motion, Councillor Cross. Any discussion on the motion? Councillor Junker?
Yeah, I have a question because I wasn't at this meeting. So just by reading the report and everything, just clarifying. So staff already do all this work. They just weren't properly documenting it, and this will allow it for insurance reasons. Then is that my understanding?
Your Worship, the policy just makes it more formal. They're already doing it, but
yeah.
It kicks in the insurance when we have a policy.
Because we're documenting when we did it and whatnot, and how often we do it.
They've always done that, but now we just have a procedure to follow. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Cool. Thanks.
It's codifying.
Yeah. Any further discussion on that motion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Item 8B. Councillor Elliott?
That staff initiate the proposed neighborhood consultation plans with the applicant for Hay Road and, around there.
Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Charlotte, any discussion on the motion? Councillor Junker?
Hey, Your Worship. Just a couple of questions about this one. If I may, Ms. Wade, can I ask a question?
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks. We spoke the other day, and you had indicated that for this process, with the developer-led process, I think there's a stakeholder meeting this week or next week, or...
Through Your Worship, we met with the stakeholders last week as an initiation, and so what is happening is these are a group of about half a dozen landowners in that area.
Yeah.
Some that have existing development applications with the city, and others that have expressed their ideas and concepts for development, and they've agreed to work together as a team.
For Hay Road or Johnson Heights?
Oh, sorry, other one. Sorry, wrong one. I apologize. Yes, so for this one, Hay and Grizzly, they're having a stakeholder meeting this Thursday from, I think it's 4 to 7, and it's going to be up at the resort in the Nelson Room. And the developer is doing the public consultation, and they have prepared boards. Myself and our planning consultant, Hazel Christie, will be attending the meeting, and we will facilitate for clarity in the process, but they are leading the consultation.
Okay, so if I may, my question comes down to costing. Who's paying for you to be there? Are the taxpayers paying for you to be there, or are they paying for you to be there? It's a developer-led process. If it was a city-led process, I'm just wondering who's paying.
Yes, so we are working with the developer on this to provide good customer service. It is a requirement under the LGA, the Local Government Act, that prior to any OCP amendment, there must be community consultation, and so we're following that process. If we had the ability through fees and charges and through amendments to our fees and charges bylaw, we would be able to charge staff time for attending that, but we don't have that in play right now.
Good to know. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other discussion on this motion? All those in favor?
Sorry.
You had a question?
I did. I'm not sure what I'm looking at. Sorry. So this is a proposal for...
So we're because I called a question?
Yes, sorry, I missed it. That's all.
Okay.
Yeah, so I do have a question.
Okay. Can we allow the question after the vote's been taken?
Is the Sorry, I was.
Well, I asked the question, and the hands were raised, except Councillor Ryan was hesitating, so.
I was totally not paying attention, I'm sorry.
Okay, so go ahead, ask the question.
So this area of land is in Arrow Heights, and there's a developer-led consultation to decide what kind of development would go on there.
Ms. Wade, would you care to weigh in on that?
Yeah, just to clarify.
Yeah.
So as part of the OCP amendment process in the LGA, it is a requirement to have more public engagement than just a public hearing and prior to the application. So the developer is leading the process, and it's initiated by the applicant themselves because they want to work with the neighborhood, and because they want to have a positive relationship and understand what the neighborhood is about, which is something that is promoted in the LGA, and the way we would like to move forward in conducting these sorts of major rezonings and OCP amendments, so there's more community engagement.
Mm-hmm.
So we are supportive in helping them through this process at this time. And then as they go through it, what they're doing is they're having various options for discussion with the community to figure out what the community is looking for in the neighborhood. And then staff will review that and provide its advice as it would in any pre-application process. And then as we move into the actual formalization of the plan, that's when it would come forward to council for the first and second public hearing. So this is just a little more it's more engagement. It's bringing the community in earlier and getting input earlier so that it's more of a collaborative process in the formation of the CD zone.
Okay.
Ms. Lou, do you have anything to
No, that was Mary Ann's summary at the end.
add? Councillor Ryan, any further questions?
No, that's great. Thanks a lot.
I'm going to call a question now. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Moving on to staff reports, 11A. There's a motion on the table. Someone want to bring that forward, please? Councillor Cross?
Sure. I get the long one.
Yes. Yeah.
That application LIQ 2019-05 for a temporary change to a liquor license be received, and that a response of no objection subject to compliance with Revelstoke Fire Rescue Services requirements to the Liquor Control and Licensing Branch with respect to application LIQ 2019-05 for a temporary patio expansion at the River City Pub to coincide with the proposed Luna Festival to be held on September 27th and September 28th, 2019, be provided.
Is there a second for that motion? Councillor Charlotte. Any discussion on the motion? Councillor Younger.
Yeah, Your Worship, a couple questions. When I read through this, it talks about the compliance with fire rescue, but the committee that approves the public events put in here subject to the RCMP review. Is that done then now? Has that been completed?
Corporal Blakeney, have you had that across your desk yet?
No, not yet.
Okay, so if we approve that today, then it will go to the fire rescue and to the RCMP to make input as to their concerns regarding that. So in the past, this group has done this for Luna. They've extended their patio, by putting up fencing and whatnot, and it seemed to work quite well.
Yeah, no, my only question was if it had gotten there, because I saw that Lori's thing, she put the RMCP detachment, so I was curious as to whether or not they had even received the email. And then I was just curious, I thought it was pretty good last year, but I just was curious if there was any known issues from the RCMP stance last year.
Not
There was no issues from last year. I do recall talking to Lori about it, saying that it's not been a problem. So we wouldn't be against it. That's for sure.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion or questions regarding this motion?
Does this open the door?
Go ahead.
Does this open the door for other establishments creating the same or petitioning for the same?
Well, we can always ask what's happened in the past. Ms. Lowe, you want to weigh in?
So, Your Worship, this This organization is working with Luna Festival, so it's a society, so they're all working together to create one large event for the city. So it's not just one liquor establishment trying to increase their capacity. Exactly. So this is something that the city has supported previously, but again, exactly what your worship said, applications can come in, but the city does recommend it to be with a society for a larger event that's for the whole community, not just to benefit one liquor establishment.
And last year, during the LunaFest presentation, the front part of the pub was actually blocked off and utilized for a show or a display for kids. So this is kind of that compensation sort of thing they're able to provide in some way and then accommodate the adults in the back end. So, any further questions on this motion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Moving on to 11B. Councillor Rind.
That J Construction Limited be awarded the unit price contract based on the negotiated proposal price of $1,352,950, excluding GST, and that the mayor and director of corporate administration be approved to sign the agreement.
Is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Sherlett. Any discussion on the motion? Councillor Junker.
Yeah, lots of questions today.
Okay.
Okay, so in regards to this, these plans here, it was noted in here that this comes from the pavement management plan, geotech assessment, staff recommendations, and public concerns. The only one that I really have a question about is on 3rd, basically in front of the school. It talks about in here that part of the job that they're doing, the existing sanitary main is currently at risk of failure due to localized sediment along the eastbound travel lane because, as we all know, basically the bank is collapsing. Are we wasting money here by basically repairing this? That's not going to stop the bank from collapsing, or should we be looking at possibly closing down that road? Or
Mr. Komnowski.
No, I don't believe as you term wasting money on it. It's at the time the director of engineering felt it was, and the geotech assessments said that the likelihood of it collapsing further into the road is a lot less likely, but closing the road is not really an alternative. So we feel that this is an adequate way of protecting that sanitary main, and it is a large main, so there's always no alternatives to move the main as well. So we feel it's the best way to protect it long term, and from the original geotech assessments, there's no concern with the entire road sloughing into the river.
Okay.
Yeah, it's more the immediate area.
Okay.
Yep.
And then one further question. I know Ms. McCabe's on here. Maybe Ms. Lowe can answer. So this isn't coming for funding. This is from the pavement management. That's sort of the operational budget. That's not from the capital project reserve. Is that correct then? Because we put money every year into the road pavement plan. Am I wrong there?
So through your worship?
Yes.
Funding for the project comes from different approved capital projects as well as operations.
Okay.
Listed under the financial implications, there's a large list
Yeah,
of where it's all coming out of.
Yeah, I was looking at the different ones, so it's multiple, collaborative.
Yeah.
And then once these ones are done, they're struck off the list, and then is there still a new one, or will our operations manager then reassess what kind of is next then, kind of thing? Is that how it works then?
Yeah, correct. So then we use asset management to determine which roads need the most work or what needs the most work, and then we bring that forward the next year.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Councillors, any further questions on that motion? Councillor Elliott?
Just on the process, was this the best way to offer this work to for tender? We lumped 4 different projects into one entity, and they bid on the entire element. I'm just curious, is that standard?
Ms. Lowe?
I'm actually going to refer to Mr. Coleman.
Yes, we felt, and even on this project, we'll probably see JJU's General Assembly, the next year's bidder. There isn't enough, if I may term it, iron in town to actually supply the need, but by all means, if we can keep JJ in town and working, we feel that that's our best value for sure. And they are a local company, and they employ probably 90% local people, so not having to pay the travel expenses extra costs for accommodations and such. And they are going to assist her with the General Assembly on this, who's already working on projects for the Big Eddy area, water projects. So we feel that they have equipment in town as well, and them putting those together, and they're not termed like huge projects, so putting them all together turned it into one large job and very marketable for us.
Does that answer your question, Council? Councilor Charlotte and Councilor Juncker.
I'm just curious about the Garden Avenue work. It says removal and replacement of existing curb, gutter, and sidewalk along portions of Garden. There's some stretches along there that have no sidewalks. You kind of get bumped out into the street into the middle of nowhere, it seems. Or at least it's on different sides. So it's just going to be replacing existing. It's not creating anything new, correct?
Yes, Your Worship. No, it's just the portion between the curb and some sections of sidewalk on the La Baguette side are going to be changed right up to the Legion.
Right.
And then on the other side, the loading ramp for Save-On is the issue there, and then an upgrade for Storm there as well.
Yeah, sure. Definitely tell there's a lot of heavy trucks going around there.
Yeah, and then the sidewalk runs exclusively from Victoria to First Street on that side, but we're just focusing on that loading ramp area for Save-On there. That's what's being done there.
Yeah.
Councilor Juncker.
I know that the city had handed out notices letting them know that this work was coming. So will more notices then go out? Like, I'm assuming these aren't going to all be done at the same time, but again, with the 3rd Street one, do you know what the approximate, because the road's obviously going to be shut down then, that's a pretty major, if you're replacing the sanitary main, I would think, is the road not getting shut down then, or will it be a single lane, or?
We may be able to use some single lane alternating there during certain phases of the construction. Yeah.
Okay, but the businesses, wherever they are, like La Baguette or over there, will all be notified how long the stretch is, a possible closure then?
100%, yes.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Councilor Cross?
Just in that vein, if I may, what time of year do you see that? Having lived through a number of construction projects with a business in other municipalities and knowing the incredible impact it has, what time of year are we looking at maybe doing this work, do you think?
Well, we're hopefully get underway with, they're not certain on which one they're going to start with yet, but within a month they should be digging here. Yeah.
I would just hope, Your Worship, that where it impacts businesses like La Baguette and so on, that we're looking at the off-season more than the key season. It really has a major impact.
Yes, Your Worship. We already talked to Save-On and La Baguette about the October timeframe for that.
Okay, excellent.
And then also we're sort of hobbled with the paving season too, so we have to keep that in mind as well. We can't get into Remembrance Day or whatever, but we tend to have more likelihood of getting pavement in the October season than we do peak periods for Parks Canada and highways, right? So they're more, Valley paving is more available to us during that time frame than they are now during the peak paving season.
Well, that's excellent, because in my experience, sales drop between 40 and 60% when these projects are on, so it's a big hit. The further past September 15th we can go, I'm sure they'll appreciate it.
It's already been discussed, yeah.
Yeah, great, thank you. I'm very glad to hear that, thank you.
Any further comments on this motion? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Moving on to correspondence. There's correspondence there from the regional library. Someone want to put that motion on the table? Councilor Cross?
That the request from Okanagan Regional Library for funding assistance with the RevLab be forwarded to staff for a report to council outlining financial implications and options.
Is there a second there? Councilor Charlotte? Any discussion? Councilor Lund?
Yeah, so this is just a letter, or sorry, we're just requesting staff to look at what options we have available to us. So we're not actually supporting it at this time, correct? Okay, thanks.
Okay. Any further discussion on the motion? Councilor Cross?
Just related to the motion, Your Worship, I saw the pro forma paper outlining, it was the pro forma media release that we've outlining the different options and clarifying where all these dovetail and so on. I thought it was an excellent piece, and it helps clarify all of this for everyone, so I thought that was excellent. Closely related, I thought I'd mention it.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Good. Councilor Young?
Yeah, Your Worship, if I may, just Ms. Lowe, with everything going on, what's the ETAs on these staff reports, like by the end of the year or a couple months' time, or what do you think?
Through Your Worship, I would have to discuss it with staff. I could probably get back to you on the management meeting tomorrow. This request from Oakland Regional Library has kind of been floating around for a while, so it won't take too long. I do have staff on holidays, so but within the fall, by the fall.
Okay.
Councillor Schiller?
My understanding with the with the library that they're funding with Columbia Basin Trust is they have to get this in place by fall. So if it's going to take us some time, is it still going to work out? It'd just be interesting to be able to have a conversation in a timely enough manner that it would matter. That if we leave it too long, there's no point in even doing it. So just being mindful of that, I guess. But I just remember that being part of it.
Yeah, and we will be. Any further discussion on that motion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you. Moving on to item 12D. Someone will put the motion on the table. Councillor Ryan?
That the request for Revelstoke search and rescue be forwarded to staff for consideration.
There's a second for that motion. Councillor Charlotte. Any discussion on the motion? Councillor Junker?
Yeah, Your Worship. Can we maybe look at another meeting, maybe making a separate resolution to send off? I know it's too late for UBCM, but again, we should be emailing the province asking them to once again step up and start properly funding search and rescue as well. I know it's utilized within the city, but most of their calls are not in city property and out in Crown land. So as many other cities are doing, requesting them to properly fund search and rescue might be something we could look at.
Yep.
Thank you.
Councillor Cross?
Yeah, in that vein, you know, when staff do look at this, assuming the motion carries and staff are looking at it, it'd be nice if staff included in there some option on going to the province to help with this, given, you know, the reality of the situation.
Well, we're going to ask those questions of the province anyway and see if we can get some assistance with this sort of thing. We may be having conversations with some of the ministers while we're in Vancouver. If some of them are, if this is part of their process, then we'll ask that question. Otherwise, Councillor, but you just make the motion, yes.
Your Worship, through Your Worship, I think if council wants this to go to the province, a letter to the province, instead of considering space in the city of Revelstoke, you could change the motion to reflect that. We just put that in to guide.
I think
It's your choice.
Yeah.
In addition.
Okay.
In addition.
I think we'd like both.
Do you want to, somebody want to amend that motion?
Yeah,
Councillor Junker?
Yeah, I would gladly amend it. Like, I have no problem with this letter of request, and staff are going to come back again with their thoughts and all that.
Yeah.
But I think in addition to this, Ms. Lowe, if you could do a letter that we could read that could be sent to the province, just maybe utilizing the SAR team for some stats and whatnot, but the one big one I picked out of there that I didn't even realize was it said we're the 10th busiest SAR team in the province. Well, I lived in the Lower Mainland for 20 years, and everybody knows about North Shore Rescue, but clearly not enough credit's given to Revelstoke Search and Rescue. So, yeah, maybe you can have the staff do up a letter to send to the province.
So your motion is...
Motion
Request funding, or what are you asking?
Yeah, to request funding. Yeah, to help out with this project.
Right.
Is that clear?
Yeah.
Okay. Cindy, that's clear. Councillor Elliott?
One of the topics, or one of the points of conversation last week, or the last session, was about possibly combining space, sharing space at the fire training center over in the industrial park. Possibility, whether that should come into the equation or not.
Well, we're going to talk about what options are open to us, and so we'll refer that to Mr. Komanowski and his staff to get a better idea of what would be open for what they're wanting. Councillor Ryan.
I'm just wondering if it makes more sense to have a report requested, just I'm worried it might get lost in the abyss, but maybe if you guys have a timeline in mind, then I don't mind leaving it the way it is, but do you think it makes more sense?
Well, we want to do it sooner than later.
So I'm
I mean, as
confused.
far as the letter.
I'm just wondering, you know, we've got a staff report for the Rev Lab. Does it make sense to also request one for this, or do we already have this as a priority?
Oh, because this is for consideration.
It's just for consideration. I'm wondering if we don't request report I might get.
Your worship, we will bring back what options we possibly could have and what their requests with respect to DCCs and utilities would look like pricing.
Can we get a timeline on that, just an estimate?
Again, it will probably be closer to fall.
Well, I wouldn't even suspect the province would even get back to us before then anyway, so, okay.
So you're all okay with the amended motion? Okay. Do we need to vote on the amendment to the motion or on the whole
It
thing?
would just be a friendly amendment. We can just move forward.
Friendly amendment, okay, we've done that, so we're just going to vote on the entire motion as amended. All those in favor? Motion's carried, thank you. We have a letter from Mr. Amon regarding cleanup of the Columbia River. I'm going to actually talk about that just a little bit. Years ago, car bodies were, so first of all, I guess the park down there was the city dump or somewhat of that sort of thing, and we built a ballpark on it. So starting to clean that up would be a hazardous sort of thing, but there was car bodies that were built around the edge or put around the edge and then things put on them. So I received an email today, I think maybe all the council received that same email, suggesting that instead of removing that we cover that up with what we call riprap rock, which is Mr. Komanowski can explain. It's pretty rough rock, but it might be something that we could do. And I guess, I don't want to put a timeline on it, but I think that we can talk to the staff about that and see what the potential is, because there's going to be a dollar value with that and a safety value. And when I talk about safety, I talk about two things: safety of our staff as they're doing that, and then safety of the people in the area if we don't do that. So, is that a fair comment, Mr. Komanowski? We can have that conversation. Are you deer in the headlights look right now?
It's a little concerning. Like first, my understanding that high water mark is all hydro property.
Okay.
And secondly, to add riprap, you'd have to work in a lot of fishery windows, riparian area. So a lot of permissions would have to take place, and the windows are small for fishery windows. They're typically late October, early November, for especially the kokanee spawn. So there's a lot of things to consider there. And I do agree that removing it could be definitely compromise the integrity of the dike, so to speak. If you start to remove it, a lot of the existing riprap, the riprap is actually placed. It's usually 1 meter to 1.5 meter to 2 meter, and it can be placed with an excavator, and it's actually sort of Lego blocked and locked together. So pulling any of this iron debris out could start to topple existing riprap and compromise the toe of the dike, which would be very harmful.
Yeah.
So lots of things to consider, but we could talk about those internally and provide some answers there perhaps.
Okay, maybe we could do that, and we can also approach BC Hydro, and I can draft a letter and talk to them about that. Councillor Juncker?
Yeah, Your Worship. Yeah, I was just going to say that would it be worth making an official motion for another staff report? But that looks at, like officially the geotechnical, the environmental, all that kind of things, as well as emailing a letter to Hydro, or are we just going to let staff?
Absolutely. I would second that.
Yeah.
So before you get too carried away here,
Just we have a question for Ms. Lowell.
So, Your Worship, I don't believe this is city jurisdiction at all. So what we would have to do would maybe be appeal to BC Hydro first.
Okay.
And don't touch geotech, and none of that. That's not our jurisdiction.
So should we make a motion then to ask staff to engage with
Reach
BC
out to
Hydro
BC
about this?
Hydro with respect to cleaning up the...
And then let us know what the answer is?
Absolutely.
Councillor Cross?
Just on that, in that letter, I'd like us to be clear. I mean, cleanup's a strong word, and I actually agree with the citizen who wrote the letter about be careful with just moving this iron, because it's doing a job. And around the world, car wrecks and tires are actually used to restore reefs and many other riparian things. So the real issue, I think, is it stable, and can we make it sightly, as opposed to cleanup. So just could I ask that we be clear on our request to Hydro?
That's a good way of wording it. Thank you for that.
Yeah. I think we could improve the look and the feel, but I'd be careful about and the safety. But
Sure.
And Councillor Sherman.
I was just saying, I seem to recall reading one of the storyboards on the walkway down there that kind of talks about the history of it and how it fits in. Where, like, yes, it's unsightly, but the story is told too. It is that piece of history.
It's not the first time it's come across.
No, I wouldn't doubt it. I wouldn't doubt it. I would be leery about spending too much time on it.
Yeah.
I think if we send a letter to BC Hydro and get their take on it and see what they're willing to do would be good. Councillor Ryan, did you have a question?
Whatever happened with the boat launch?
Yeah.
Well, I've spoken to Hydro about that several times. They're not prepared to put any more money in it. That was their words, because they spent $2 million on the one down at Shelter Bay. And there was an issue with the one here in Queenie Park because of the water level and also the currents and safety, so they didn't want to approach that any further. So, Mr. Komanowski, have we filled any potholes or anything down there?
Your Worship, we have done some minor repairs.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
To make it passable for voters.
So that's what we've done. And that's kind of where we're at. I'll have a conversation with Hydro again and just see, but at this point in time, their comments to me is they're not prepared to do any more or spend any more money on that site. They made their contribution, and they did that, but we also talked about them putting more money into, on the way to Martha Creek there, the 5 Mile or whatever it's called, and have a look at that sort of thing. So that make a little bit better up there. However, it's not south of the dam, it's north of the dam. So, Councillor Elliott.
This Bernhardt Edmund, is he from the Greenbelt Society, or is he?
I have no idea.
Yeah, so
I know who he is, but I don't know what his affiliation is to any of that sort.
Has any?
I'm pretty sure he doesn't sit on the Illisola Greenbelt Society.
Yeah,
That's
that would be, what's their perspective on the matter? That might be worth investigating as well.
Well, I'm not sure whether they have a perspective, because this is a different thing, as Mr. Komanowski has said. This is now a hydro thing because of the high water mark.
But they're the protectors. They're the environmentalists, the stewards of that area.
Yeah, but the problem that we're talking about here, does that even come into the Illisola Greenbelt area at all, Mr. Komanowski?
Your Worship, no, those trails do not.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought.
I think this, if I may,
Yep.
I think this village just thinks it'd be nice if it was cleaned up.
Yeah,
Maybe not understanding that the iron is playing a role.
Yeah.
And that we cavalierly dumped wrecks there ages ago because we didn't have any other place to put them. Right.
Yeah. So, and what I'll do is we'll kind of letter back to him and let him know where we are with this, and that we're going to talk to BC Hydro, so that he doesn't think it just dropped off the face of the earth.
Right.
Okay, are you okay with leaving that as it is? No need for a motion? You're okay with me writing letters, that sort of thing? Okay, so we're going to carry on. We don't have any press here today, so I'm going to ask to move in camera pursuant to section 90.1A of the Community Charter. Someone want to make that motion? Councillor Charlotte, Councillor Cross, all those in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you all for your time. We'll take a 5-minute break and